Well, hello there, and welcome to After Hours 53. Yes, it's one of the rare breed. We don't do it often, but when we do, we go to town with it. It is a YouTube premiere, so I am on my way back from somewhere, but I'm saying hello to you, and we are, if not quite live, almost live. So what have we got tonight? Oh, lots. We have the week at MacBites headquarters, albeit a little bit of a short week because Friday's missing, but still lots to talk about. Then we've got updates and new releases, followed by party planning. Now, is that not just perfect for this time of year? And it was a heck of a party and we thought we'd share it with you. And how we did the seating plan. Good news with that is lots of applications it took. Then we're on to our freebies, followed by, yes, we did pivot tables. But this is advanced pivot tables. He lost me at pivot table. But Mike will be here discussing advanced pivot tables before I move on to part 2 of our cloud storage section. This week, Dropbox. Now, before you think, use Dropbox, used it for years, know it all. There's actually quite a lot to it. Even I was surprised. Because I think with Dropbox, far too expensive. I would opt for something like 50 gig of storage instead of 2 terabytes, but that's not an option. Still, it's worth looking at. So we will be looking at it. And then we haven't had an unboxing for a couple of weeks. So this week we've got 2. Could be 3 actually, but we'll say 2. We'll go for 2. Now, if you are with us, make sure that you have clicked the button in the lower right to take this to HD. Normally, we broadcast live in 720p. But because this is a pre-record, I spoil you. This is 1080p. So no excuse for having it in any way fuzzy at all. Just make sure you click that HD button. Then we're on to the week at MacBites headquarters. Well, a short week, but a good week. Started on Saturday. You know what we're like, in particular, Mike. Oh, we went to a Bjorn Again concert. For the uninitiated, they are an ABBA tribute band. We've seen them a couple of times before. They are amazing. But this time, we had a VIP slot. Last year, we were right down the front, which was great. You know, you were really involved, dancing away, fantastic. But it was a little bit peoply for me. I don't do people that close. The other thing that was mildly annoying. It doesn't sound annoying, but trust me, it's annoying. At the front, well, in fact, the whole floor, as you can see, it's a standing venue. It's Manchester Academy. I had these non-slip shoes on. Oh, no, I wasn't in my 4-inch stilettos. Don't own a pair of those. No, I was in sensible shoes that were comfortable and that were sticking to the floor. I think there was some alcohol involved. Well, I hope it was alcohol. So this year we went for the VIP experience, and there we are with a fabulous view. If I didn't look to my left, because if I looked to my left, he was enjoying himself, wasn't he? He's not quite mastered a hairbrush, I don't think, but never mind. He had a fabulous time. In fact, it was even better than that. Brace yourself. While we were waiting, because the band didn't come on till about 8:15, there was a football match on. Fear not, he did not miss it. I think that's possibly the first time he's ever watched a football match attired as Agneta, but he enjoyed it. So what more can I say? Sunday was a far more refined time. It was music, but it was music of a different kind. We had our first carol service of the year. It was lovely. It was really lovely. So that was our first one. There's plenty more, trust me. But that was just our first one. And then it was on to Monday. Well, my week started well, thanks to you guys. A personal milestone. 13,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you are one of them and you are watching this, thank you very much. If you are not one of them and you are watching this, you could make my lifetime, couldn't you, by subscribing? Button's down there somewhere. So that, as I say, good start to my week. Then Tuesday. Now, I should make clear at this point, we're actually on holiday. You're thinking that's a bit early for Christmas, but no, Mike finished on Friday night. That's last Friday night. So we're a week into our Christmas holiday today. But we always have a long holiday at Christmas. We don't do the summer thing with the warm weather. No. We take our time off at Christmas. So Tuesday, we headed off to a luncheon club. We go to a luncheon club about once every 2 months, although they take the summer off. And this time, we've been there before. We've been to that venue before. We had some pictures from there a couple of months back. But that's where our luncheon club is, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. We were expecting a speaker to be talking about being a police from the, the Mounted Division, the policeman from the Mounted Division. But unfortunately, he was ill. So instead, we got a teacher telling us all about the funny tales from, I think it's about 40 years as a teacher, with nativity plays. I wish I could share some of them, but they're just too funny. There was the one about the little boy who'd had an accident, but we won't go there. Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Then Wednesday, yes, we thought we'll be good. We'll be really kind. She'll appreciate this, we thought. We bought Lola a new bed. You'll like this. It's fabulous. It's really big. It's about 1.2 metres by about 80, 90 centimetres, which for the Imperial amongst us is big. It's over a yard long and a yard deep, I think. Anyway, Madam really enjoyed herself. Oh, yeah. She was not pleased. Look at that face. But it got worse. What did the chicken do? Come and see Daddy. Come and see Daddy.
Cutie.
Come on. Gorgeous girl.
No.
Yes, said blanket bought out of love had offended her. What's that doing in my house? She was most aggrieved at its arrival, but guess what? Yes, within the hour she'd come round to our way of thinking. I think she'd completely forgotten. We were out of sight at this stage, obviously. I think she'd completely forgotten that we monitor her every breath. And I said, I'll just check on the camera. There she was, bless her. Fabulous, fabulous. So she loves it. Don't call the RSPCA. She really does love it. Which takes us to Thursday. You're wondering what happened on Thursday. Quite a lot, unfortunately. It's dogs at polling stations. And she was, and look at that face. She was in the middle of telling them what to do. At which point, she gave them a little message for the candidates. Must admit, she looks like I felt. The weather was unbelievably bad. It's been drizzly, but heavy drizzly. In fact, I was coming back home on Wednesday night, I think Tuesday night, one or other of them, and the traffic had to stop because it was raining that much. And as you can see from the ground there, it was raining. Drizzly, howling wind, raining. She was not pleased. That's why she's hiding right next to the building, because there's a little bit of a canopy at the top. And she let her feelings be known. Mike then took her back because that polling station's in our local park. And she decided, as you open the door, they had all the heating on. They also had sweets in the polling station. Very good of them. And she decided she wanted to go inside. No, I thought, well, she can't make much more of a muck-up than any of the politicians. She's definitely a princess and felt that she needed the warmth. But sadly, she wasn't allowed in. Oh, bless her. So we did the dogs at polling station thing. Anyway, that was our week. Hope you've had a good week. But there was more than that went on. That's just at MacBites headquarters. But there's actually lots of news this week as well. The first thing that caught my eye, as new tech always does, is the Echo Buds. They are the competition, I'd guess, for the Apple AirPods. These are brand new. They have the noise cancellation of the new AirPods. I thought 5 hours playback per charge wasn't much, but I'd probably give them a go anyway. Obviously, they go in the charging case, and with the charging case, you get your 20 hours, as that says there. Why is it appealing to me? I like the black for a start. They look a little bit more subtle than the Apple ones, but you've got pretty much the same problem as you would have with the Apple ones when it comes to purchasing. How do you know how comfortable these things are? And do they take them back? Because sometimes they don't, with a hygiene problem. It did appeal because they are Alexa enabled, so you can talk to the things and ask. Now, when we first got an Alexa, we hooked it up to our calendars on iCloud. That did not go well. It sort of worked. It could say, these are on your calendar, but they were out by an hour. Since then, we've hooked it up because we moved our calendars. So we hooked our calendars up on Google, absolutely fine. So I must admit, that quite appealed. Mobile Alexa. I am tempted, you can tell, can't you? There is, however, for those who are that way inclined, the option to mute the microphone. Privacy concerns and all of that. You'll see from this, I have not yet ordered. It does not say purchased on there, but I was tempted. The reason that I've left it alone, because usually I can't help myself, but the reason that I've left it alone is it's a brand new product. It literally launched 2 days ago. And they have a tendency to Amazon to launch with a price like that and within a couple of weeks reduce it quite substantially, particularly with a sale. Now, obviously the Black Friday sale has gone, but there is always the Christmas sale. So I am living in hope they may be a large, substantial reduction coming up. Let me know in the chat, are you thinking of buying, or do you stick with your AirPods, or do you not have AirPods at all? Because I bought those headphones a few weeks back. They are fabulous. They are very comfortable. They are fabulous. And for the first time ever, the noise reduction thing, active noise reduction actually made a difference. I have had a couple of pairs before and I couldn't tell the difference, but with those I can. I'm tempted with these though. I'm tempted, so let me know. Are you tempted? Another thing I noticed this week was the announcement of the colour of the year. Pantone do this every year. I was disappointed is probably too strong a word, but I thought that was a bit blah. Classic blue. Now what I did with it was I took the number, so converted the Pantone number to RGB, hex, HTML, CMYK. Doesn't look the same to me. I much prefer my colour to that one. But still, it's not bad, but it's just, usually it's more exciting. It's something brighter or more unusual than that. But that is the colour of the year. So expect lots of websites done out in that colour in the next few months. Now, another new thing this week. Outlook. A new Outlook. Now, this is for Mac users. I think Windows users have had this for quite some time already. But there is a new Outlook. There are requirements in order for you to get your hands on it. But it is, you'll need to have an active Office 365 subscription. And you will need to enable fast track updates. Because this particular version of Outlook is only available on the fast track right now. It is that version you will need. Outlook 365, 16.32, but also underneath there is a revision number on it. So it needs to be that one. Another thing you will need is to be on Mojave at a minimum. Catalina's fine, but you will need Mojave at a minimum. Now, I am still running Mojave, so I have access to this. Now, usually when you're talking about system requirements, that's as far as it goes. You don't need to think about anything else. The actual version of the software and your OS version. But in order to enable, so not in order to install it, but in order to enable the new interface, you have to have at least one mail account that is either Outlook.com, an Office 365 account, or Gmail. Now that's quite an important limitation because if you're self-hosting mail somewhere else or it's just not one of those three, you will not be able to enable this new interface. It'll be there within the application, obviously, but you just won't be able to enable it. Now, if you're thinking that's ludicrous, totally agree with you. Completely agree with you. But there is a sort of workaround, which is an Outlook.com account. It should be the same as your Microsoft ID account. you should already have a free email account. Now, you may never use it. You may never be aware of it. I have one. It's there. I don't particularly use it. I get spam every now and then to it. But that would be enough to enable me to enable the option. Obviously, if you've got a 365 account and you have mail via that will work. I guess your best bet, if you don't think you've got either of those, or if you have no idea how to access them, is to just create a free Gmail account. You don't need to use it. You just need to have it available within Outlook. And that's what's called a qualifying account. That will then be sufficient to enable all of the other accounts, even if they are, massive air quotes, unsupported accounts. Makes no sense to me, but that's Microsoft for you. So what's all the fuss about? What do you get if you do enable it? You get that. What's different is it's very much a Windows 10 look, isn't it? The double, ribbon thing has gone. And being replaced by that sort of big chunky thing that, to be honest with you, would look much more at home on an iPad. I don't like it when they do that. We were told, I have banged on about this endlessly over the last 10 years, we were told when the iPad came along that applications needed to be redesigned for the format, for the form factor of the hardware. Okay, no problem with that. Because there's no mouse, I don't want buttons that are 3 pixels square. But 10 years on, don't give me that on a desktop, because you're wasting so much space. I'm limited with the options that I have available. My take on it, but we'll come back to that. If you look in the top right hand corner, that's the option to enable new Outlook, and it's enabled on that view that you're looking at there. You don't need to have the calendar view, the agenda view on the right hand side, but it's an option. So that's the bit that you're looking for, that button. If that's there and it's enabled, turn it on. If you don't like it, you can always turn it off. My biggest bugbear with it is that ribbon. There's a handful of options, but not enough really. There is no option once you've enabled the new view to go back to the previous 2 rows on the ribbon. You can go back completely to the old view, but you can't have the new view and go for the double ribbon. It's just not an option at the moment. They're saying that ribbon is customizable, and it is. The 3 dots on the right hand side of it, and it takes you into the customization options. But there's actually very few of them. So those are the only things that you can actually add to that ribbon. Obviously, on a larger screen, you can add more than they have added, which is just that standard 6. There is sync as well. But still, it's not the double ribbon. It doesn't give you the kind of feature overload that you may be used to. You can use the options at the bottom to show the labels, or show labels if space permits, or you could hide the labels. But as I've said, there's less than 20 options and they've got to fit within the single line space. Not brilliant. Now you'll notice from the interface, they have put search front and centre here. It's in the middle of the title bar, which is very Scrivener-esque. That's becoming a kind of standard for search. The idea is you can be more granular in your searches. You click on the funnel to see the options, and these are the options that you get. You can also use Shift, Command and F and go straight to the search panel. Then there's the agenda panel on the right, the right-hand side. I actually find that quite useful. The only issue I would have with it is it's locked away inside Outlook, and I'm used to having it in a browser, and I'm used to getting my mail in a browser. But if you are in any way interested, or you have your Office 365 account, you may as well have a look at it and try it. So Microsoft are pimping it on their site at the moment as the new Outlook for Mac. The one feature that I didn't show you there, but I can confirm is there, big style, is the dark interface. So if you wanted to convert that to a dark interface, you pretty much can. I do use it, but I use it because it has this feature that you can have favourite folders. And the favourite folders can be any number of levels down in your mail hierarchy. And there's one I have called expenses. Needless to say, use it quite a lot. And I put all the receipts that I get and invoices and stuff like that, I put in this folder. And what the Google Mail client does not do well is access that folder, whereas Outlook does. So I have it on mobile and I have it on my desktop. I must admit, I do not use it in any way like I used to 13, 14 years ago on Windows. I lived in Outlook all day, every day. And I certainly don't do that anymore. But it's included with your Office 365 sub, so go have a look at it. Right, moving swiftly along from there. There was lots of new things this week. Yes, the new Evernote search. Now, if you've been following the beta programme, you may well be aware of this. It proudly proclaimed itself as I went into it this week and said there is a new search available. I think they also sent an email. The idea is the old search was incredibly powerful as long as you spoke the Evernote language. It has its own search language. Now, many moons ago, when Evernote was my primary note-taking application, come storage, come everything else that it does application, I knew the language off the top of my head, and I would write complicated queries to bring back just what I wanted. But it is quirky. It's not a standard language. And what they've done with this new search is, as it says there, it's integrated into the web version and it's giving you real-time search suggestions. It's also taking into account potential typing mistakes. It shows you tags and it shows you attachments and other things as well. And you can save searches. So what it actually looks like is that. So you start typing and obviously not many words, AUM, but what it's done is it's picked up stuff that starts with AU and appreciated that there's a possibility you've made a spelling mistake. Now that screenshot there was taken from a video that Evernote put out on their new YouTube channel. It was about 2 to 3 months ago. And they demonstrated not only how this new feature worked, but they also gave you the backstory to it, why they've implemented it the way they've implemented it. And if you are thinking, oh no, I know the old system and I want to use the old system, fear not, that's still there. But I highly recommend going to youtube.com/Evernote and finding the video giving you the background history of the search, the new search system that they are implementing. It's well worth a watch. Believe me on that one. Something else that we have talked about a couple of times, because I basically live in Drafts now. Drafts is my global inbox. It started life as an iOS application. It then became available in beta on the Mac. And it's finally been released on the Mac. But what they've added, Drafts for Mac now has actions. Now, actions are what makes Drafts so powerful on iOS. I must admit, when they said we're going to bring Drafts to the Mac, I thought, do we need it? Because on the Mac, you automatically have other features available. If you think about it, there's stuff built into the operating system that means there's an opportunity maybe you don't particularly need actions. Needless to say, now they're there, they are incredibly useful. So they appear on the right-hand side of the interface of Drafts for Mac. You can see there mine says social, and there's 5 things underneath it. Those are the individual actions. So I have an action to copy what is in the main area in the middle. Now, obviously, on a Mac, I'm far more inclined to Command and A, Command and C, because that's what I do in every other application. The reason that copy command is there is it's a lot easier to access that on iOS than it would be to try and make a selection on iOS. And that was why I thought, maybe I don't need these things. But underneath, you'll see 4 hashtag codes. MacBites, Samoyed, Jackapoo, work out loud. When I post to Instagram, obviously on Instagram, to have any degree of discoverability, you need to hashtag the life out of something. Those hashtags enable me, well, those actions enable me to add hashtags to posts. Now, again, you can post to Instagram from the desktop, but it's a bit of a black art, I'm afraid. But on iOS, it's amazing to be able to add the tags with just one tap. And those hashtags that I add, there's hundreds of them. There's a good 15 to 20 on most of them, sometimes more. Again, to have that available on iOS is brilliant. But the other day I was posting to Facebook and I wanted to hashtag it with MacBites and another one with Samoid. And I thought, it's available now. That's fantastic. So that's what they've added, the ability to process the text that forms the basis of an individual note in drafts. You have already said you want me to show you drafts in more detail in the future. You all said you wanted to know more, so that's what we'll be doing. But the good news is it's available right now. You can download it and have a play with it. The only thing, I think the majority of features is available in drafts, but the thing that you get when you subscribe that's critical as far as I'm concerned is the ability to sync devices, and with it synchronize the action groups that are available as well. It's not expensive. I am now frantically trying to think how much it is. It's less than £20, around the £18 to £19 mark a year. I couldn't work without it, so to me it's worth it. Even though it's a subscription, it gets a buy. It is very, very good. So have a look at that. Also, when we're talking about prices, guess what came out this week? Now, when I say came out, more on that later. Yes, the lesser spotted Mac Pro. It's got to be done. As soon as something is out, you need to go and spec it up. The price? Well, how bad could it be, I said. Let's just say, brace yourself by the time I'd finished specking it up. I think Apple have totally lost the plot myself. Now, I will admit, £25,000 of that was RAM. There was a lot of it, but that's not the point. When you look at that, I mean, obviously I've spec'd it up as far as it'll go, but there is a 3.5 gig 8-core, and then I went for the 28-core 2.5, which added 6,300 just for one item, hence the price. Now, note for Apple. See that? Delivers. Taking orders in December does not mean you met the promised release of Q4 2019. You didn't. So there's a heck of a lead time on it. You're looking at least 2 months. I guess Apple have made it available for pre-order because they'd be crucified, wouldn't they? If they didn't make the pre-orders available till the 1st of February, it would be said they missed their Q4 deadline. But to me, just taking the orders, that doesn't mean that you got there. So that's the news this week. Let's head off to our first demo, which is party planning, the seating plan. Now, you may remember a couple of weeks back, we had a huge party. It was the biggest party of the year for our social circle. And although I've taken the names out of there to protect the innocent, or guilty as the case may be on the night, we needed to create something like that. Now you're thinking it's just text. How difficult could that be? Oh, you have no idea. Because from the same information, we needed to create individual table plans per table. We needed to include the food they'd ordered and all the dietaries, and produce that and make that available in a format that they could quickly get their information from. So it was alphabetical by surname. And Mike set about doing this, bless him, by himself. We have a system in Notion where we can track what people have ordered to eat and whether they're coming or not. But to get that information out of there into a beautifully formatted version of it, Mike tried by himself. I stopped him after about 10-15 minutes and said, please leave that alone. It'll be far easier if I do it. Which should indicate to you it wasn't just Excel that was involved. No. To create that, we started off in Notion, but we went through exporting. So it needed to be a CSV file, which went through, if you're wondering what that icon is, that's Sublime Text. It also went through a spreadsheet, not necessarily Excel, but it did when Mike did it, didn't when I did it. And then we did the final layout in Publisher. There's a lot of steps to it, but one, you could repurpose it as is, because you can have a free Notion account as long as you've got less than 1,000 blocks. Google Sheets is free. Numbers is free. Your final layout, well, but who's not got Affinity Publisher because it's fabulous? App of the year. So I will show you the entire process. You may find this useful for your party planning. So let's go and have a look at it. Right, so it started off in Notion. So let's go to Notion. I'm actually taking you through here the entire thing in Notion. So building it completely from scratch. Right, so the first thing I need to do is make sure that this is active and add a new page. So I've just created a brand new page in my private area. But obviously, in reality, Mike and I shared this. So I need a new page, and first thing I'm going to do is make that full width, just so I've got a little bit more breathing room, so I can see my data. And this is the party planner. Party planning. Now, I'm going to need some data in here, and I'm going to need somewhere to put the data. Luckily, I have data. Let me show you the data. The data is in here. It's a CSV file, which is a comma-separated value file. And all it is a list of people. There is 200 people in a list. And it's comma-separated, so the first name and surname will go in separate fields. Hopefully, when I import it. You can see at the top we also have first name and surname. So the first row will form the field names. Or at least that's the plan. So let's import it. So back to Notion. You've got options when it comes to importing. If I get rid of that, there is an import button here. There is an import button at the bottom of the list on the left. And there's also an import button up here. So they do really want you to import data. Doesn't really matter which one you go for. I'll go for the one that's right in front of our faces. And these are all the types of data that you can import. Oh, that's quite interesting, actually. For a start, you get $5 if you import from Evernote. I'm not doing that. I've got 10,500 notes in Evernote. But also other to-do systems, Kanban systems like Trello and Asana. But ours is a comma-separated file. So I'm just going to click on the button. It's going to toddle off here. I've put it on the desktop. So it's my Party People CSV. And just click Open. And it starts uploading it straight away. And it adds it into Party People. There's the new table that we have. Now, I need to do things at this point, or stuff won't work that well. But you can see I've got a first name and I have a surname. And I have 200 people in there. Now, they're not all going to come to the event. So we're waiting for an RSVP, which means we need a way of tracking that. So I've only got two fields. The first thing I need to do is to add a new column. And we'll put this as attending. Are they attending, yes or no? And with it being a yes or no, a checkbox will do nicely. And then all I need to do is literally mark off if they're attending. Now, I happen to know for demonstration purposes, but this was reality for us as well, that we had 120 people and it worked out nicely for the tables. So what I need to do is make sure that I have in here 120 people marked as coming to the event. Now, obviously, I'm clicking away quite happily. I have no idea how many people that is. But if we go right down to the bottom of that list, and there are some special things we can do at the bottom. You can't see it unless you hover, but you can calculate on each one. So we know for this one, we could just have a count and we could just count all. And that tells us there's 200. So that gives you a count of how many people you have in your database that you need replies from. But on this one, where this is are they attending or not, we could have an all, but that wouldn't do us any good. It would be far better to count those that are checked. 23. So I'm doing quite nicely. And as I add more checks in here, you can see that starts counting up. Now, I need here, I know, 120 people. So one thing I can do, if you get a huge batch of people that are coming like that, you can go into here and edit a property and mark the attending. So now I've got 85. So what I need to do now is just literally go through this and make sure that I've got around 120. So I'm just going to grab the majority of these, do exactly the same again until I have 120 attending. Not the best demonstration, but how are we doing? How are we doing? 149. Now I've got too many. So I'm going to start taking them off from the bottom. Now, obviously, in reality, we just happen to have 120 people. You may have more, you may have less. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go for the 120 that I already had. So that should be 120. So I now have 120 people attending. Right, what else do I need? Well, I could at that point take these out of here because I know who's attending and start playing around. But we came up with this idea. And I said, do you know what? You could allocate people to tables. Because the fact they're attending, if we go back to the slide, let's go back to the slide and have a look at that. There's actually 3 pieces of information we need on there. We need their name, their surname, and their table number. That's what we need. And we don't have a table number right now. So we know that they're coming, but there's no table number. So let's add another column. And this one's going to be table number. Now, should it be text? Should it be a number? Well, bizarrely, you may think, but all will be explained. It needs to be a select. So a select is where you go into it and you select. So let's say we're going for table 1, table 2 and table 3. In fact, that person's not going, are they? So let's make sure that we pick a person that is actually going. So you select from here what table people are on, thus making sure that they are actually attending. Now, of course, to aid you in that, you could apply a filter to that table. So you could filter and say, show me only where the attending is yes, and that will show you 120 people attending. Now, your count is 120 and your checked is 120. But it's still a long, arduous business to go through here and think, I'll put them on table 1. You can't visualise it. Now, obviously, if you've got a couple, so we've got Brian and Rebecca, then they will go on the same table. And I'm sure we have some others like that. But still, you can't visualise it. So what I said to Mike was, let's add another view. And this time we'll say by table. Now, this is where Notion is just so amazing. Go for a board view and create. And it has a think about it, and you now end up with columns. And your columns are table 1, table 2, table 3, and no table number applied. At which point I can take Kimberly and put her on table 2, and it's very visual. That's brilliant. So we just need all of the tables. Populating. So we've got 3 so far. We had 15 tables. So I'll go for the 15 tables that we had. But you'll notice another bit of a problem at this stage. I have people in the no table number who aren't attending. Some that are and some that aren't. So in this view, and I'm going to get rid of this sidebar so we've got more of a view. But in this view, I could do with making some changes so it works perfectly. So best thing to do, apply a filter. And this time we want attending to be yes. That will filter it down so the only people in the no table number column are actually attending. And at that point, we will know that they need to be allocated to a table. Right, that's a good start. Another thing that would be handy, just really for finding people within a table of, we had 11 on our top table, the other tables had 7 or 8, is if we did a sort. So if we add a sort and we sort by surname, when you now look at the table, Each individual table will be sorted alphabetically as well. So that's starting to pull together, isn't it? So what I need to do at this point is create the other tables, and I can do that with the add a group option here and literally just go through and create the other tables. Now, things to be thinking about while I'm doing boring work, like making the other tables, is you'll notice that by default it randomly assigns a colour to it. But you could have the colours mean something if you wanted to. Now, one thing that happened to me at an event, I am not a vegetarian, I am not a vegan, not by a long way am I. And I got sat next to this gentleman who was a vegan. I'd ordered the lamb and he'd ordered the nut cutlets or something that may vaguely have resembled food at some point, but didn't look that appetising to me. And he spent the entire meal, while I was trying to eat my lamb, which is one of my favourites, telling me why I was a complete heathen and a monster. So it may be that you decide, oh look, we've got 7 vegetarians, let's put them together. In which case you may have all of these being one colour. So let's say our colour, hang on, can we do it that way? We can. Default colour, So let's say we wanted our vegans to be green, and every other one, so that one there that's already green, you could change that. So everyone, the colours could mean something basically is what I'm saying. We didn't bother, didn't matter to us, but you could do that if maybe you've got family, so you put them on a family table and a family table's green or whatever. It could mean something rather than adding in an extra field. Whether you would go for that meaning something or adding an extra field would very much depend on what it was you were attempting to add. But then all I need to do is allocate these people 2 tables. So I said we had 11 on our top table. So how many are we getting there? Let's start adding them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You may be wondering why we had 11. We had a photographer. So our photographer, everyone else was virtually in couples, but our photographer made it 11. So we got 6 on there. So let's make that one 7. And literally you just go through and you do this. 5, 6, 7. I can't remember how many tables we had of 7 and how many we had of 8. But I'm assuming by the end of this all will be revealed. So what I think I might do, should I waffle on while I fill 15 tables, or should, because it's a YouTube premiere, I have the option to speed it up? I must find the Benny Hill music. So I'm going to head off and speed it up. Right, I'm back. That took longer than I would have rather liked it to take. It wasn't an arduous thing to do because how we did it, instead of doing it with 120 people, we did it as and when acceptances came in. And obviously as the acceptances came in, we knew families who wanted to sit together, friends who wanted to sit together. So it didn't take an intensive 5 minutes to put it all together. It was gradual. You will notice it looks slightly different. I made a change as I went through that. I went into the properties and I changed the card size to small. 1, there isn't that much information on there, and 2, it enabled me to see more columns. And then what I would do, now I have no people with unallocated to a table, I can go into there and hide that one. So I now have table 1 all the way across to 15. And some have 8, majority have 8, a couple have 7, and the top table had 11, as I said. Right, so at that point, you've actually allocated tables to people. Or people to tables, depending on how you look at it. There's still a long way to go, believe me. But it's not difficult, there's just a few steps to it. But it will make life easier in the end. So that's what the table looks like. If I then get told that Sophie can't possibly sit with Robert, it's a simple matter of dragging her across and finding somebody else and swapping the tables like that. And it did work fabulously well. So we had no vegans next to raving meat eaters, I can assure you. So At that point, you may think, well, I'll just export that. That'll be fabulous. But if you think about the final result that we want, which is an alphabetical list by surname, that view won't give you that. In fact, what we export won't give you that, but it will all be sorted out. So I can flick between the two views. So I have show all and I have by table. I've got the same information displayed, but in a different order. So that in there is the 120 people that are coming, and they now have a table allocated to them. So the next step is to get that information out of Notion again. You have a few options when it comes to that. Let's just try an export, because Mike and I found as we were doing this, there was a few issues. So I'm going to the wrong place for a start. Export, and you can choose your export options. Markdown and CSV, PDF or HTML. Now obviously HTML is to put on a website, and PDF is very nice to read, but doesn't let you do anything with it. So it's going to have to be Markdown and CSV. So I'm just going to hit export, and I will stick that on the desktop. And you'll see it's got a very strange name, but not to worry about the name, because what it is exporting is a zip file containing the export. So the zip file has a strange name. So let's come out of there now. There's the zip file. So I'll open that up, and it has called it Party People 2. That's because the original data is on my desktop as Party People, and it's intelligent enough to know not to overwrite it. So let's have a preview now. It's pretty similar, isn't it? If we go in there, we had first name, surname. Now we have whether they're attending or not and a table number. So the first thing to think about with that is just a minute. When I exported it, I had a view applied, and the view that I had applied showed me only those who were attending. So when I exported it, why isn't that what I got? And the fact is that's just the way Notion works. So you could be thinking at this point, that's not great, because now work you've already done, you've got to redo. But don't worry, it's not that much of a calamity. You can deal with it all. So I'm going to double click my CSV file, which will open it in Numbers. But you could do this in any application that supported CSV. So you've got lots to do with it. You've got to sort everything out. Now, first of all, we have discussed before Numbers. In fact, we only looked at it last week, and we said that Numbers has tables. So it does have sheets, but on the sheets it can have more than one table. So what we've got there is a table, and the formatting of it, not brilliant so far. So first thing, take away the table name. I don't need headers on the left-hand side where it says first name, because they're not headers. They're actually part of the data. But I will have the headers at the top, because they are not a person. They are not part of the data. They are actually genuine headers. Right, so what do we need to do first? Luckily, everything that you need to do with this is very easy to do, no matter which spreadsheet you're working with. Right, first of all, it would make sense in here to filter this. So let's look at the show filter options, and you have an option to add a filter, and I would like to filter on attending. So add a rule to this, and what it is it didn't do this last time for me. I have actually been through this once and it did not do this. Right, we need a value equal to a number. No, equal to text. That's good. We will filter for. I wonder if it needs to be yes or no. Oh, let's find out where the text is not. So we don't want where the text is not. No, that's a bit of a double negative, isn't it? But it'll do. So we're filtering out where the attending was no. And that should mean that we now have in here, let me have a look at that. Wondering why I've got more than 120. But it's because it's actually hidden them. So unlike some applications where it would renumber it. It's actually just hidden them here, which is fine. That'll do fine. Now, next thing to think about. How do we want this data to appear in the final product? And that final product, if you remember, was the one with columns. And in order that people can easily find themselves, it needs to be alphabetical. And it's not alphabetical at this moment. It needs to be alphabetical by surname. So up there, and we'll go to the filtering again. This is not good. No, it's not filtering, it's sorting. It's sorting, woman. Right, sort ascending. Brilliant. So now we have surname starting with A, and it's all in the right order. You will notice that it's not in table order. If you wanted to print it out by table number, you could. Just apply a sort to the table number. But so far, so good with that. Excellent. We're getting somewhere. Now, I need 2 or 3 pieces of information, depending on how you look at it, because column C has already filtered it to only the people attending. Now, the 2 or 3 pieces of information I need is either the full name, so Stephen Alexander, Christopher Allen, and the table number, or I need the first name, surname, and table number, depending on the format that I want in the finished product. Now, pro tip. The easiest way to get the 2 names together, concatenate the 2 names, is to do it in a spreadsheet. So I will put here a new column. So I'm adding a column before. You may wonder why I'm putting it in what is now column D. All will be revealed. But what I need to do in there is to put together William and Ahmed, Stephen and Alexander. It's really simple. Equals, click on where the first name is, an ampersand. Now I'll do it the wrong way first. You'll learn better if I do it the wrong way. I want the first name and I want the surname, so that should do, shouldn't it? Not quite. It needs to have a space in between. So if we go back into there, after the first ampersand, we put speech mark, space, speech mark, and another ampersand. And what we're saying is take the name in A3, add a space after it, and then add whatever is in the surname column. And that should work perfectly. And then all you need to do is copy it down, all the way down to the bottom. And that will give us our 120 names. Now, obviously, that column may need to be a little bit wider. It would make sense to give it a header, which is full name, but I don't need to. There is a reason that I don't need to. Right, last check at this point is, do you have the information that you need? I do. I have the full name and I have the table number, and I have them alphabetical by surname. Fabulous. Couldn't be easier at this point then. Instead of doing any wild exports, just select the data you want, which is the full name and the table number, and copy it. Simple as that. I'll then put that down there out of the way, because the next place I'm going is to Affinity Publisher. This was where Mike was while I found him floundering. Right, I could do this from scratch, but I'll actually show you the plan that I had. So this is an A3 sheet. It has a 1-inch border on it. So let me show you how you create that. You choose A3. We don't want it in portrait, we want it in landscape. And the margins need to be 25 millimeters, which is 1 inch. And just click OK. And that gives you exactly what you need. The reason I'm not doing it in that new file is so I can show you that's what we actually want. How easy is it to do that? Right, very easy. Right, the first thing you need, the data's on your clipboard, remember. So you will need somewhere to put the data. So go and get the text tool over here. You have frame text and you have artistic text. You want frame text and you want to draw a frame out in an area of the document which is within the margins. Now you can see I've got 3 columns. I wonder if the data will fit in 3 columns. Spoiler alert, no, it took 5. Right, the reason that I've got this set to 3 is when you come in here and you add a text frame, normally it only has 1 column. But what it does is it remembers the last one you used. So at the top there, the last time I used it, it had 3 columns. But it couldn't be easier to add extra columns, as many as you like. So I happen to know we need 5, but that's not a problem. I'm going to leave it set to 3. Click in there and paste. And that will take all of the data in. So it's showing you in 3 columns. It does actually fit, but it's quite small. So at the moment, that text, if we select that, is 10 points. But in here, when I did it, it was 12 points. So if I come in here and think, yeah, it's a bit small, I would like it easier to read. So I'll go for my favourite Avenir and I'll go for 12 points. Does that match? I think it does. Right, we've got a couple of problems. Well, that doesn't actually look too bad. I think the difference is the spacing, isn't it? I've got much nicer spacing on it. So we don't really want it that crowded. The other thing is it's very difficult to read because the table numbers, there is a gap. In fact, it's probably a tab's worth of a gap. But they're not lined up. They are all the same distance from the surname in terms of being a tab, the next tab stop, but not lined up. Whereas in here, they are all neatly lined up. So that's really what we need with some more spacing. Okay, so what can we do about that? Well, the good news is, as you select some text, so let's just take 1 line at this point. It looks like it's got a tab after it as well, which is not great, is it? Wonder why. It's obviously exported more than we actually need, but never mind, it'll work, she said. Right, all you need to do, as you select some text in column 1 or 2 or 3, whichever one you select the text in, you get a ruler at the top of the column. So if I select just 1 line, I can add my own tab stops. So there's a tab stop, and it will move it. Awesome. Let me get that back. Don't disappear. Right, there's my tab stop. That's a left tab. No, it's not. Right, no, it's not. It's the left one. It's a standard one, but you can flip it round by double clicking. And then you can move that to wherever you want it to be, which in my case was right the way across the other side. And it's not... what are you jumping for? Good grief. Come on, we've done this before. We've done this for real. We have done this many times. So don't play around. Just stay where you are. Right. So that works for the first line, but obviously I need it to work for all of them. So let's do a Command and A. When you do a Command and A, you will see that you've got all of this on the the right-hand column, sorry, the right-hand column. Tip my right from my left today. Right. And what I need to do is to put a tab stop on it. That one there. There we go. And I need that to move. And I've got all kinds of things going on here that should not be going on. In terms of... no, that's definitely not what I want to do. I need to lose these columns, these tab stops, which shouldn't be there. I have no idea why they are there, but you can see to get rid of them, if this happens to you. I've done this 9 times and they've never been there, and now they are. That's very strange. So let's get rid of it. Because basically what I want to say is that I want 1 tab stop. And then you need to work out how do you want the table numbers to appear. Now, when I did it for real, we had 2 numbers for the table. So 01, 02. This one hasn't come through like that, which is fine. So you need to make up your mind whether you want 6 and 8 aligned with the 1 of table 14 or the 4. Which that one will align it to the left, but if you double click, it will align it to the right, which I think looks neater. And now, as you drag this about, you can have that wherever you want. But before we finalise all of that, there's a few things wrong with this. For a start, it's brought in a blank row, so let's get rid of that at the top. We need some space for the header, so that needs to come down a bit. Now it's very squashed. We also needed more columns, so we want to add more columns. That's starting to look a lot better. By adding extra columns, it's automatically made some space. So it's starting to look much more like that one, which is my reference point. Starting to look much better. Now, if I were in here, and I don't want that tool, I want that one, just to take that down a smidgen. As I'm taking this down, you can see what's happening. I've actually got, on the right hand side, I'm trying to work out how much space I need, about that, I would say. On the right hand side, we've got some space at the bottom of the column. We would have room for 2 more. I'm not counting these. I assume I've got the same 120 that I had before. So fingers crossed I actually have. Let's get the top in and let's sort the rest of it out. There's bits missing. So I'm going to use Control and W. Control and W will hide all of the guides and grids, so I can see what the finished printed product would look like. If we have a look at the finished printed product, if I take them away, you can see, oh yes, there's a header at the top, there's a border, and there's these lines that are separating them that, while you could say, oh, they're optional, it would certainly make it easier to read if they were there. So let's put this back on and fix that lot up. Now, this time I'm going for artistic text across the top. I probably want it about that size. And you can put whatever you want. Party time. Obviously, mine said ladies' night, etc. Let's say Christmas party time. There we go. Now, at that point, I wonder if I did have that as artistic text. I'm beginning to think I possibly didn't. Are you artistic text? I don't think you are. Not that it makes a difference, not that it matters. But obviously we don't want it looking like that. So I will select that and change it to the very nice Trajan Pro. That looks good for Christmas. And put that in the middle, which I can do like that. That does give me a little bit more room to pull that back up if I want. So let's give ourselves a little bit more breathing space. And I'm looking for the column thing, which is in View, Studio. Do I have my columns showing? Must be at the top somewhere up here. Oh, I know what's gone on. You have commands that should be showing, but some of them aren't, because I've got this squashed down so I can do it at 1600 by 900. So that's why I'm not seeing everything, I do believe. But I will soldier on anyway. Right, so we've got that bit in. Next thing to think about, the border, which is just getting a shape on here and drawing around it. And I actually did just eyeball that. Whatever looked about right. Now, obviously that isn't centred. But if I centre it top and bottom, that evens it all up. And then it needs a stroke on it. So into the stroke in here, it's got a 1-point stroke, but you can take that up as much as you like. So something like that. I probably had it 4 or 5, something like that. Now, what looks trickier but actually isn't, is the lines between them. This is not a table. It's one text block, which has been split into 5 columns. So how I'm going to do it, I'm going to get the pen tool. I'm going to go down here. And you can see, as I do that, which unfortunately, as I zoom in, disappears, but it actually says 7 pixels either side. So I can just start, I was going to say start drawing, but no, click, and then move up to the top of that, and click again. And that gives me a line. It's a little bit too thick, so let's take that down to 1 or 2 points. Probably, just to be awkward, 1.5. There we go. Now, what I did with that, before I went any further, I felt when I did the Control and W that it was right, but it needed a little bit more height. So I actually took it outside top and bottom, like that, which meant I probably move that up a smidgen or move the other one down just to give it a little bit more room. And that gave me my first line. Now, make it much easier to do the second one. Copy, paste, and move it across. Now, what you can't see, because I've actually got it turned off, but you can see when I get it in the right place, is although I don't have my guides showing, my guides are still guiding me and showing me that that is equal in distance of 7 pixels either side of the gap. So that's spot on right, but it's not spot on right top to bottom. So I need to move it up a little bit, at which point it should tell me it's matching. Now, is that matching? I do believe it is. Now, I did copy and paste, but you can also hold the Option key down and drag. That will also give you an extra copy. And then move that into place like that. Perfect. Copy, paste, and put the last one in. And that looks absolutely perfect. Yep, there we go. I'm still looking for that missing option, but never mind. So, that's how you do it. It's alphabetical by surname. It has table numbers on it, which is fantastic. And it looks pretty and it prints out well because I did it and it does, I could assure you. But what do you do if it's a huge dinner and you've got more than 120 people and they don't fit on the page? Well, it's not that tricky because you would just have copied more data. But there's one thing that you should do at the Affinity Publisher end if that happens, which is really straightforward. So let's imagine here I'm going to add 2 more pages. Let's say we've got 360 people coming to this great event. Now this one here is my reference, so I'm going to put that right at the bottom out of the way. Let's say in here I had more names. What you don't want to do, it's easy to get the names and to put the names in there because you just copied and pasted them, in my case from Numbers, but it could have been from any spreadsheet. But it's all of this surrounding thing that's the problem. Let me get to this one, which is the one we've done. It's all of this. The lines separating here, the frame, the title. Well, you should be screaming at me how simple this is. What I'm going to do is select. So I'm holding the Shift key down and I'm selecting each individual part of this that is decoration. And I'm cutting it. It's gone. But fear not. I'm going to put it on Master A, which is automatically already applied to page 1, page 2, and page 3. Let's not worry about page 4. Page 4, not good. Obviously, it's got that applied to it as well, and it's doubled it up. But that's only there as our reference. That is the fast way to enable you to have multiple pages. So if I just copy the text and put the text on there now, obviously it's a copy, but it wouldn't make any difference if I'd taken text from somewhere else and pasted it in. That is the way to have multiple pages. And beauty of that is when it's not Christmas, when it's the New Year party, it will automatically update on every one, which is why we use master pages, isn't it? Excellent. So it's quite a long demo, I'll grant you, and there's a lot of applications involved, but when you think of what you've actually managed to achieve with that, that's impressive. So we used all of those apps, but we started in Notion. But you could use different apps entirely. You could copy and paste it into Word if you really wanted to. Obviously, that was Excel, but you saw me use Numbers. And any text editor, mine is Sublime Text, but there are many free text editors that would enable you to do that. So that was party time. Let me know in the text chat any of those features that you could actually use. Have you got other ideas that you could do with them rather than a party plan? So what I always say is take the principles away. So we had a list of names. They were sorted alphabetically. It could have been a conference. Doesn't have to be a party. Tell me what you could use that for. Think out of the box and let me know. Right, today's freebies. Oh, I'm being self-indulgent today. Yes, we are in the midst of our advent calendar on MacBites. So if you subscribe to the MacBites mail, you will get a freebie every day in December. This is yesterday's A picture's worth 1,000 words. And what that actually was a whole range of free stock image sites, very, very high quality stock image sites as well. Each one hand-picked and checked by yours truly. That's because we've done this before, and one of them had gone, unfortunately, but I still found another one. So if you subscribe, let's go back up there. If you subscribe to the MacBites mail, you will get a freebie every day in December. Now, if you're thinking, but oh, it's so far gone. I know, but look at the bottom. If you've missed any days, you can click through. That does not mean don't subscribe until the end of the year. Until we finish on the 23rd. No. You want it every day, trust me. Some things are time limited. So best to try it now. But that's our freebie today. Right, what have we got next? Oh, you remember I mentioned those advanced pivot tables from Mike? I'm handing over to him and he's going to show you those advanced pivot tables. So over to you, Mike.
So, pivot tables, part 2. Yes, we covered this a couple of months ago, but there is more to pivot tables than what I showed you then. So today, we're going to have a look at calculated fields, calculated items, and something called get pivot data. So here is my data. There's about 1,000 rows of it. It's made up sales data. It's for a company that makes and sells different flavours of ice cream. And they sell that ice cream to customers based in various states across the US. And this is the data for the first few months of 2019. On my reports sheet, I've already created a number of pivot tables, or at least started a couple of pivot tables. And what I need to do is I need, in the first pivot table, I need to show profit per flavour, or profit per product if you like. And in the second pivot table, which is the one in column E, I want to show profit per state. What I also want to do is to show the amount of tax we have to pay per product and the amount of tax we have to pay per state. That is legal information that we need to submit. Now, I can't show profit directly because I don't have the profit in the source data. You can see I've got revenue, I've got cost, but I don't have the actual profit there. One option, and the option that most people would take, would be to stick an extra column into that table of data with a formula in it that takes revenue minus cost and calculates the profit. And once the profit is there, it just becomes a normal column in that table and can be used in the pivot table. It will just appear in this list here, and you can just drag it in as you do with any other field. But if you do that, you're adding to the number of formulas in this file. And if I did that, I'd be adding 1,000 formulas to this file. Now, that's not too bad, particularly as the formulas would be simple formulas, one column minus another column. But imagine if you had 10,000 rows of data and you needed to use some complicated formulas like multiple if statements or VLOOKUPs, and they take a lot of processing power. So you end up with a larger file and a file that requires more processing power, so it'll run slower. So another option is to do calculated fields in the pivot table itself. And also sometimes you don't actually have the source data in the spreadsheet. This source data, instead of being in the spreadsheet, it could be sitting in a CSV file, it could be sitting in a database, and then you create your pivot tables directly from that data source, in which case you don't have the opportunity to create extra columns of formulas. So I'll discount the creating extra columns and I'll show you how to use calculated fields within pivot tables. So let's start with this partly completed pivot table, the one that's in column A. All I've done is I've dragged the flavour into the rows section. To create the formula, you click somewhere in the pivot table and click on Analyze, fields item sets calculated field. You have to give the field a name. You can call it anything you like, but I will call it profit. And then you create the formula. Now, just like the spreadsheet, all formulas begin with an equal sign. Why Excel puts in a 0, I don't know, because 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, you would remove it anyway. And then you build the formula by using the field names rather than the spreadsheet type formula where it's F1 minus F2, for example. This one would be revenue minus cost. Now, you can either type revenue and type cost into that formula box, or you can double click it from that list of fields. So I will double click revenue, type in a minus sign, double click cost. And there's my formula. It's simple, it's straightforward. I'll click on OK. And I now get my new column called profit. It gets added to the list of fields on the right hand side. It also automatically gets added to the values section of that pivot table. So that is showing us the total profit. Another benefit of that is that there's only one formula. If I had done it this way, the way I talked about a couple of minutes ago, where you'd actually put the formulas in the spreadsheet, there'd be one formula per row, and that's what increases the file size and requires more processing power. But here there's not one formula per row, there's just one formula for the whole pivot table, and that formula then gets processed against each item in the pivot table. The other benefit is if I want to use that same formula in another pivot table in this file, then I can do. So if I go to this second pivot table, you see on the right hand side in the pivot table fields list that I have the profit field there. I didn't add it. It's automatically added because this pivot table is based on the same data source as this pivot table. So it automatically means that the profit field is available to this pivot table. So I will drag profit into the values section, and that then gives me the profit per state. Let's do another formula. Let's do one that's a little bit more complicated this time. I need to calculate the tax payable. And the tax payable is going to be, let's say it's 20% of the profit, where the profit is more than $20,000. And it's 10% of the profit otherwise. And I want to calculate that both per flavour and per state. Now, again, what most people would do if they didn't know about calculated fields is they would put another column into the source data and put a formula in there. But I can put the formula into the pivot table. So to do that, select a cell in this pivot table. We'll do the pivot table in columns A and B first, and go to Analyze, Fields Item Sets, Calculated Field. Now, if you click the drop-down arrow on the right-hand side of the field name, it shows you any existing calculated fields that you've created in this file. And you can select them to make changes to the formula, and you can also delete them from here as well. But for this one, I will close that and redo it because I don't want to select that field called profit. I want to create a new field. So I will call this field tax. And then the formula, well, in this case, if you were doing it in a spreadsheet, you would use an if function. So we can do the same thing here. Equals if, open brackets, double click on profit. So if profit is greater than 20,000, comma, then we want to take the profit and multiply that by 20%. And you need to use the decimals. Then comma again, otherwise we multiply the profit by 10%. Close that, close the bracket, and click on OK. And you can see that we now get an extra column which shows us how much tax we have to pay altogether and broken down by flavour. And if I want to apply that same formula to this in pivot table in columns E and F, click in that pivot table, right hand side, we can see the tax column heading has appeared, drag and drop it into values. And what if the tax rates change? What if the government changed the tax rates? So I'll go up to Fields Item Sets, which is on the Analyze tab, Calculated Field, click the drop down arrow on the right and select Tax. And let's go and change the figures. So let's make it 15%. So election coming up, so we have a tax cut. I'm not saying election in which country, of course. And let's say that that is 5%, so 0.05. And click on OK. And what that has done is that has updated the data in column G and the data in column C in those two pivot tables. So that is calculated fields. There are some limitations. For example, you can't do VLOOKUPs, and there are some other limitations, but that's where DAX comes in. And I did an introduction to DAX a few weeks ago. The fields item sets is very, very useful, or should I say the calculated field under fields item sets is very, very useful. It does have its limitations. I would say that most people would probably use DAX and Power Pivot instead of that, because this calculated field feature is relatively old compared to DAX. But having said that, you can only use DAX if your data has been added to the data model and your pivot tables are based on the data model. And very often you've got pivot tables already set up that are not based on the data model. And sometimes you don't need the power of DAX. It's a case of choosing what options you need to use when you need to use it. But there's a couple of examples of calculated fields. A field is a column. Let's move on and have a look at calculated items, which is the other option on the Fields, Items and Sets button. Now, a field, as I said, is a column, and an item is a row entry within a pivot table. Why would I want to create a calculated item? Well, let me give you an example. I've been asked to show total revenue for the states on the East Coast and the states on the West Coast. And I can't do that directly from the raw data, because nowhere in here does it show me whether the state is on the East Coast or the West Coast. I could add an extra column into column G, but that would take me time. But as long as I know which of these states are in the East Coast and which of the states are on the West Coast, then I can do it by creating two calculated items. To make this work, you have to make sure that you've got your cursor in the first column of the pivot table. Because if I put my cursor into column M and then I go to Fields Item Sets, calculated item is grayed out. But if I put it into column L and do it, it's available. So make sure your cursor to start with is in the first column of the pivot table. Select Analyze, Fields Item Sets, Calculated Item, and then give the calculated item a name. Now the name is the name that's going to be displayed in that column. So let's call it East Coast. And then the formula will be, in this example, Delaware, so I'll double click on that to add it into the formula to save me typing it, plus Florida plus New York. So you put in the names of the items. Now, mine's a relatively simple formula, but you can do more complex ones than just adding up. And also the reason that New York is in single quotes is because of the space within it. Click on OK once you've done that, and we now get this extra item, East Coast. And do a similar thing for the West Coast. So analyze, fields item sets, calculated item. Give it a name. I'll call this one West Coast. And the formula will be California plus Washington. Now what that's just done, it's also doubled the grand total because it's still including the individual states. So what I need to do now is use the filter to only show East Coast and West Coast. So there is an example of how to use the calculated items option. Now the third option to show you is something called Get Pivot Data. Over here, I'm going to create a little summary area. So I want to show the grand total sales. And you can see that for the grand total, it is 173,211.60. And that is shown in any of these three pivot tables, the grand total. The other totals we've got are the totals of profit and tax. So I want the grand total revenue. Normally, if I wanted to reference what was in, for example, J7, and I want to put that into B14, I would go to B14 and I would type equals J7 and press enter. And what that will do is that will give me whatever is in J7. Very simple, very straightforward Excel formula. It just happens that J7 is within a pivot table, but it doesn't have to be. But equals J7, it's picked up what's in J7. The other way to enter a formula, of course, is to use the click method, where you type an equals sign and then you click on the cell that you want to reference. Now, when you click on a cell within a pivot table, when you're entering a formula, it won't give you the J7. It will give you the Get Pivot Data function. So what we're saying is, basically, give me what is in it, and it's not saying J7, it's actually saying I1. What it's giving you is the total from the revenue column for the pivot table that starts in I1. Now, of course, it comes out as the same answer, but why is it so important to understand Get Pivot Data? Well, if I go back to the original method where I typed equals J7, it's picked up what's in J7. If I was to apply a filter to this pivot table and I only wanted to see a couple of states, it's now showing the grand total as 0 because the cell that's giving me the grand total is referencing J7, and J7 right now is a blank cell. Whereas if we referenced the cell with the Get Pivot Data, we're actually referencing not a specific cell, J7, we are referencing the grand total for the revenue column. So let's clear that filter, delete the formula, and do it by clicking on J7. You can actually type the Get Pivot Data formula in yourself. It's just another one of Excel's functions, but it's a lot easier to create it just by clicking on the cell that contains the total, and it will build it for you. So now if I apply a filter, it shows me the grand total for the revenue column for the pivot table that starts in I1. It's not referencing a specific cell. So as the grand total changes, which will happen when you apply a filter, it also changes what we're seeing for that formula there. Let's clear the filter. Let's say I wanted to know the total revenue for chocolate. Well, that is coming from B4. So if I was to type equals and then B4, it picks up the total revenue. That's actually the profit, but never mind. It's picking up the profit for chocolate. But if I applied a filter, or if I sorted that pivot table into a different order, then the total for chocolate would be on, or mint chocolate actually, isn't it? So let's get the right cell. It was B3. Then it's that row for chocolate would change its position, as I said, if you sorted the data. Whereas if I click on equals or type equals and click on B3, what it's done is it's generated the get pivot data for me, and it's saying give me the total for the profit, for the column called sum of profit, for the pivot table that starts in A1 where flavour equals chocolate. And what if you wanted, for example, the total sales of chocolate ice cream for May, which is down here, that is N15. So again, you can type equals N15 and it will pick up what's in that cell there. Or you can type equals and click on N15 and it generates the get pivot data for you. So what it's saying there is give me the total for the revenue column for the pivot table that starts in I12, where flavour equals chocolate and months equals 5. Because although months is May, it's using the numeric values of the month behind the scenes. Now you may sometimes click on a cell within a pivot table and not get pivot data. That is because there is an option to disable that get pivot data feature. Why you disable it, I don't know, but the option is there. I happen to think it's very, very useful. But if you go to the pivot table, any pivot table, and you go to Analyze, and you click the arrow to the right of Options, there's an option that says Generate Get Pivot Data. And if that option is ticked, then it's on. If it's not ticked, it's off. And you can toggle between on and off mode. So with it being off, and it's only off for this pivot table, each pivot table has its own independent setting. If I now type an equal sign and click on a cell within the pivot table, I get the K15 in this case, because it's not generating get pivot data, because I turn that option off. So if you do want to generate the get pivot data function by typing an equals and clicking on a cell, then you need to make sure that for that pivot table, under Analyze, the arrow under Options, Generate Get Pivot Data is switched on. So hopefully you found that little session useful. It was a little bit more information on pivot tables. We looked at calculated fields, calculated items, and get pivot data. I will now hand back to you.
Thank you very much. Fascinating. Not a pivot table user. Have done, don't really have much need for them now, but excellent, excellent. Now, cloud storage. We started talking about cloud storage last time when we looked at Google Drive. I got lots of emails about Google Drive. You did not know it did things like that. There's more features even than that. So we'll go back and look at Google Drive, extra features of Google Drive in a future show. But this week, we're going to look at Dropbox. Now, Dropbox is one of I would say it's the most well-known cloud storage service on the planet. It's certainly one of the ones that's been around the longest, and it's carved out a niche for itself in terms of I couldn't work without it, even though I don't pay for it. They need to take note of this, because I would be more than willing to pay for it if I could take something like 50 gig or 100 gig, because I treat Dropbox as a syncing service and I want the whole thing synced. And there used to be, I think it was 100 gig and 200 gig as an option, but they streamlined their options. And the problem now is it's 2 terabytes or 3 terabytes, which I don't want to synchronise the whole thing, and I certainly don't have the need for that much space. However, you may be thinking, well, if you're using Google Drive, why have you got Dropbox? There are certain services and there are certain applications that need Dropbox. They will not sync with anything but Dropbox, which should inform you that Dropbox is not a standard cloud service. It has some magic going on that means it provides a stable sync service for certain applications, and these applications cannot sync with anything else. My key one is Scrivener. The background magic that makes it sync Scrivener is what I need for Scrivener. I took exception to Dropbox when they changed their pricing, but I tried every which way to get Scrivener to sync with a different service, and I tried them all. I tried Google Drive, I tried iCloud, I tried pCloud, not having it. The iOS app for Scrivener just will not access stuff like that. Not even if I went a circuitous route would it do it. It did not like it. It's just easy with Dropbox. Now, I have enough storage that I can use it for that. But just to make clear, the way that Dropbox works means that it is the only sync service for certain applications and services. Luckily, there is a 2 gig free account. 2 gig's not much, but it's enough for Scrivener. So let's go in and actually have a look at Dropbox. It's got a whole lot of features that you may not be aware of. Right, first thing to think about is, how do you access your Dropbox? Now, that might seem like a really silly question, but it's not. It's not, because some people only use the cloud service. So if I put in Dropbox into my browser and I go to Dropbox, hopefully it will log me in. Yes, you're thinking about it, aren't you? Some people only access it via a web browser, but you can install it as well. So you've got different options when you come to actually access it. I don't think many people, if they're working with files and they're sharing files, there's a chance that they may just work in a browser. But I think you need to consider with Dropbox to get the very best out of it. So, for example, the Scrivener thing, you're going to have it installed. Once you've got that installed, you need to think about how many devices you're going to install it on. And that's one of the problems with Dropbox. Not only are they limiting you in terms of storage capacity on a free account, but they are limiting you on how many devices you can have hooked up to it. Now, before we go any further on that, you might be thinking, well, you've got loads of iPads, and I do, and iPhones, and desktops, and all kinds of other things as well. Interestingly, they are hooked up. I have more than 3 devices, and they are still synchronizing beautifully. What the problem's going to be is when I get a new device. And when I get a new device, everything's going to break. So when they change their services from a few gig to terabytes of stuff, and I thought no need for that. No, I have no need for the space, but I do have a need for devices to synchronize. Now, the situation is this. In a browser, you can log into as many browsers as you like. They don't consider a browser to be a device, you're just accessing your data. But actually installing it, so if we look up here, I have my Dropbox icon there, they consider that to be an install. So I have it on this Mac, I have it on 1, 2, 3, I have it on at least 5 other Macs, and everything's fine because I'm grandfathered. But situation's going to be problematic when I add a device, because although I'm grandfathered on what I have right now, the second I add a new device, it's going to unhook all of my other devices and only leave me with 3 activations unless I pay to upgrade. That is why I am going to have to pay to upgrade, whether I want to or not. That was why I decided I would take a look at Dropbox and think, you're going to be paying through the nose for this. And at the point of paying through the nose for it, you're going to want to use extra features. I might as well see what's there and what it's got, because I'm going to be paying for it anyway. The good news is, when I did that, I was surprised how much they'd added in terms of functionality that I had never used. I may never use half of it, but some of it was actually quite useful. So it's not all doom and gloom, even though it might necessitate paying for it. So let's actually take a look at everything that we can do with Dropbox. So that's your web interface, and it's showing you now recent files. Now you might look at some of these and think, whoa, they've got strange names. They do. That file there is inside a Scrivener file. You can see I also back up to Dropbox, and that was backed up last night. In the small hours of the morning, actually. And these indexes, checksums, things like that, they are all inside Scrivener files. So because I'm using it for Scrivener, the recent stuff isn't actually that useful for me. Luckily, you can choose to hide that if you want. You can then start working around the interface that you've got in here. So you can upload files. You can upload entire folders. You can create shared folders. So I will say the web interface is actually quite usable, more than quite usable. Let's do that. So we've got a file. So here's my party people too. So I can't drag and drop. I thought I could drag and drop. Oh no, drop your file to upload to Dropbox. So I'll drop it and it will prompt me where would I like to put that. Now, you know me. I discussed this last week. I have my files organised to within an inch of their life, so it can go in the inbox. I do not want it in the root. But it's that simple to upload a file via a browser. So would it be possible to use this without paying for it and on more than 3 devices? Sort of, because you could do it in a browser like I'm actually doing it now. But you would experience severe limitations. There's no way using it in a browser, as I'm doing it now, would enable you to use Scrivener, unfortunately. So while the web interface is nice and we will probably revisit it very soon, it's installing it that is the issue. So I have created here a shortcut in Alfred. I can open my Dropbox folder with an Alfred shortcut by putting DX, and I've also I can open my Scrivener Dropbox folder. But I'll just open my Dropbox folder. That will open that in Finder, and I will take you through what I've actually got in here. Now, I've created things that I intended to delete before I started this and didn't. So I'll just do that right now. Yes, I do want to delete it. Away you go. Right, that's what my Dropbox usually looks like. So I have my inbox at the top and I have my 4 top-level folders. Sometimes in a cloud service, that's all I have, but you'll see in Dropbox that's not all I have. Dropbox has special folders. One of these is apps and another one is camera uploads. Now, apps is a reserved folder, and when you install an application that supports synchronizing via Dropbox, it will automatically look for that apps folder. So these are all the ones I have in here that synchronize via Dropbox. So there's my, where's Scrivener gone? Where's Scrivener? There's Scrivener. That's the one that Scrivener uses to synchronize on my iPad. You'll see I have Scrivener extras. Those are extra files that I don't access as often as I do the ones inside the Scrivener folder. Scrivener is completely unaware of those on iOS. I have taken the decision to do that because if I put all of my Scrivener files in that Scrivener folder that synchronizes, it will synchronize incredibly slowly. So I only put things in the Scrivener folder to synchronize when I actually need them. So I think there's 2 or 3 in there. Oh, only 2. That's the Queen Special that I did for Brooklands 196 in the summer, and that is my email generator that I'm using a lot at the moment. So those are the only 2 files that I synchronize. But inside Scrivener Extras, I've got a whole slew of other files. And all I do is drag and drop them into there when I need them. And that keeps the sync lean and mean. Point being, you can add your own folders to the apps folder, but some of them are added automatically for you. So the Scrivener one was added automatically. I think Story Skeleton was. What else synchronises via here? I added Clarify. I know I did. Airmail. I didn't do that one. But upshot is that apps folder is a special reserved folder. Some applications will allow you to have your stuff anywhere. Others won't. Others will need that folder to be in the apps folder. So that's why I've left it in root. It's not doing any harm. The other one is the camera uploads. I haven't moved that because it created it itself. If I hover over that, you can see there. Let me do that. That's it, so we can actually see it. Let's go really big. Right, it's got a reserved icon on it. So it's a special folder. That one doesn't actually, which is strange, but that one does. Right. So that one's there again because I leave it alone. Now, my application support folder is my personal version of the apps folder, and it's been there since time immemorial. So it's got in it all kinds of stuff in here. My Sublime Text stuff synchronises with it. Typinator, Ulysses. Old stuff like Little Snapper, it's still there. Keyboard Maestro, Hazel. Those are folders where I have created the folder and it synchronises, but I deem it to be the equivalent of the apps folder, and that's why it's in root. Printopia is a folder that I can print to, so I've left that in there, although I might move it. The only other one to think about, you'll laugh at this, is this one called Elaine. And you'll notice there that it's got a shared icon and it's got a lock on it. Whoa, it's got both. Right, that is a folder that has been shared with me. I didn't share it, it was shared with me. And it was shared read only. And that's why it's got a lock on it. That is a pain in the proverbial. I cannot rename the folder, I can't move it. It's got to sit where it is in root called Elaine. You're wondering what it is, aren't you? Right, it's got two folders within it, a before and an after. You are not seeing the before. But I'll open the after, but you still won't see anything, I don't think. You'll just see that there are 4 images in there. Each one of them is locked because it's a read-only share. That has been shared with me by my dentist. Yes, it's dental again. They are the before and after images of the work I had done. That's why nobody's seeing the befores. Not paying that much for it and then showing you the pictures. So that's the before and after, but that's why that folder is in root. So normally I don't have those 4, but I've got 5, but I've got them for a reason. And they are on my local machine and they are synchronized to my local machine. So I don't do the selective sync thing. And for years and years, that's how I accessed it. And I'm sure that's how you've accessed it. But Dropbox, if I actually run Dropbox rather than access the Dropbox folder, we now have a completely brand new shiny interface to Dropbox, which I looked at and thought, and when am I going to use that? And the answer to that was sometime never. But you know what? It's actually quite useful. It can allow you to do certain things, more things than you could do otherwise. So, over on the left-hand side, you have the interface to Dropbox. Again, you've got your suggested folders, which unfortunately for me are inside Scrivener files. So that won't work well at all. You can star folders if you want. So if you have one that is very, very important, like, let's say my application support, I can add that with a star. It appears up there in the starred folders, and that means I can quickly get access to it by just clicking up there. I can go back to the top. So that's one thing that you can do. You could let me take this full screen so we can see it a little bit better. That's a better idea. Now, when you've got files and folders in there, so let's go into our application support and choose one of those. The panel on the right-hand side allows you to invite members, so to share things from there. Of even more significance, let's go back to the root. You can create a folder. So let's make a new folder, and we'll have that as MacBites Magic. There we go. So that might be a project that Mike and I are working on together. Right, obviously I can invite members and share it, but I can also turn it into a space. Now, if you're wondering about that, there's some examples here. You can create a working space that you can put content in. And if you look through these, it gives you examples to work with. So team spaces, project spaces, personal spaces. And when you do that, you can add extra content to your Dropbox. So for instance, it says stuff to do and you can add to-do lists to it. So Dropbox is no longer just for sharing files. So it says click here to describe the folder and turn it into a space. So something we're working on for MacBites in 2020. There we go. Right, so I will click done on there and that turns that into a space. So let's open that up. What that now looks like isn't just a list of files and folders. Oh no. You can drag files and upload them, but you've also got all these buttons. So you can make a new folder, a new paper doc. Let me know in the chat because I will be watching. Do you use Dropbox paper? I never had, I'll be honest. You can have paper templates as well as shortcuts, and you can create Word, Excel, PowerPoint, even Google Docs files in here and access them through Dropbox. So if I wanted to create a new PowerPoint file, simple as clicking on the button, we'll call that MacBites Magic as well, why not? And you now have a blank PowerPoint file that you can obviously work with in this shared space by sharing it with people. In fact, you share the space. You could elect to just share the file, but you could share the entire space as well. But you can use all kinds of other things as well. So that's just creating a file. If I then wanted to work with that, so let me double click that. Ooh, double clicking it did nothing. I'll go over to the open and try opening it with something. There we go. Ooh, double clicking didn't work. But there you go, there's your PowerPoint file. That may be less use than you would imagine because obviously it created a blank one. There was no template as a starting point. You'll also notice over here there is an icon. Oh yes, there is a Dropbox icon. And that Dropbox icon is telling you that that's in Dropbox. So let's say I start work on this. MacBites Magic. Right, that icon will be telling me that it's in Dropbox and sometimes reminding me, telling me it's safe to close it, that it's saved. At the moment, that isn't actually saved because at the top over here, we have indication it's not saved. Ooh. But there you go. I can also from there share it, copy the link, comment on it, version history, etc. But it's not telling me it's not saved. It used to. I'll save it just to be on the safe side. But that's going to sit there while you're working in it. So it gives you a tunnel through to Dropbox to do the sharing thing without actually having to leave the file, which is nice. It's nice. You'd have exactly the same options should you start a file in another application and add it to that folder and then open it from this application. So you don't have to, the file doesn't have to start life in here to have that option available. But there was also other things available, wasn't there? Oh yes. You could open, and you could choose to open it with anything that's supported to open it. Dropbox even now has its own preview. Look at that. It previews as well. Awesome. Which is handy when you don't have the an application to edit that file on your system. You can also share it from here, not only via an email to a person, you could copy a link, and there are supported applications as well. So Slack, Trello and Zoom. Now those applications I actually have installed, so I assume that's why they are listed there. But you've got extras. There's other things yet that it can still do. You have the option to send it with Dropbox Transfer. You may be wondering what Dropbox Transfer is. So was I. It is an opportunity to share a file. As it says here, you can send anything up to 100 meg. You can transfer it to anyone, even if they don't have a Dropbox account. You can track the views and downloads of the file, and you don't need to use your Dropbox storage space to do it. When you click on Learn More, it takes you out to a page, which is over here on this other page. Let's get, where are you? Dropbox transfer. There we go. I'll just get rid of that so we can actually see it. So let's take that full screen. Right, it shows you what it actually does. Now, if you've used anything like WeTransfer, it's exactly the same. Hopefully without the ads. So there you go. So that's what Dropbox Transfer is. So you have the option to do that straight from in here. So click on that. That's the actual file that you're setting. It says it expires on the 20th, which gives you 1 week. You have more control over this if you pay for an account. So you have this cog here. With the Pro version, you've got 7 days. You can set a password, etc. So you have more options with a Pro account. But other than that, you can choose to continue and it will share that file. So that could be quite handy. That I can see uses for that. That would be quite handy. You've also got the option to send with. And you can use DocSend. And what DocSend will do, it's opening that up in another browser. Right. At the moment, I'm getting this on it, which is, it needs access to it. So I'm giving it access, and then you can use DocSend. So if you use that with your company already, you can use it with the account you've got. Other than that, you can sign up for an account. So just different ways to work with it. So they really have improved this a lot. Now, I created a space. So let's go back to a standard folder in here, because I didn't show you creating exactly the same file formats, but from the drop down at the top. So you could create files from up there as well. You have the option to open that in Finder, so it will take you to your Dropbox folder in Finder. And you can change how this is all displayed. So you've got a small grid, a large grid, or a list. So this application, whereas I thought, well, I'm not going to need that. I've never needed it in the 12 years I've been using Dropbox so far. It actually is quite useful. Quite useful. Now, the one thing that I haven't looked at the moment, but I should be able to from up here, is to create something called Dropbox Paper. What is Dropbox Paper? Again, this was something that I looked at and thought, yeah, I'm not going to use that. No need at all. But actually, it is very useful. So what's happening is, off screen, I've pressed the magic button and it has taken me into Dropbox Online. And it's created what is called a document called Dropbox Paper. Now, what it's saying is all your to-dos in one place, personal, what on earth? It's basically a wiki page. So I could create my MacBites Magic. MacBites Magic 2020 project. I can type something to get going. So I can say home for all the MacBites Magic. Oh, where did that come from? What are you doing? When did that happen? I'm undoing that to see when that happened. Because it renamed itself, didn't it? Let me get going. Oh, what are you doing? Whoa, weirdness. Right, let me start again. MacBites Magic 2020 project. Awesome. Right, why are you telling me to type something twice? Right. All the magic of MacBites. There we go. Now we're okay. Right, so there's help over here, but down at the bottom, and this is where the good stuff happens, you can add images, you can add media, including video and audio, you can insert files from Dropbox, you can create tables. So let's say I'm creating a table and I'm going to do an after hours. After hours, ooh, what's the next one? 54. And another one for after hours. 55. And I want to put the topics down. So I put down Mike for Excel, etc. So I can put tables in there. Can also put to-dos in there. So publish after hours 53. And even go more detailed than that, because over here you've put a to-do, you can set a due date on it. Well, if that doesn't happen today, I'm in trouble. So we'll put that down as a today. And I can add people to it. I can assign people to it. Now, obviously, there's only me at the moment and anybody that I've shared things with. So I'll put myself allocated to that. And I can even comment on it. So I'll put, don't forget this. You're not kidding. And post on it. It's starting to look a little bit like Notion to me, because we would do all of that in Notion. So let's get rid of that. Oh, no, I want that. Oh, no, there's my shortcuts. I was looking at this at the bottom. So here I have got, are you not coming back unless I actually show that? That's not good. Or can I do it up here? Oh, there we go. That'll do nicely. I've got different options now. Right, so I can create bullet points. Bulleted list. Oh, very imaginative of me. I can make it numbered. So item 1, item 2. I can, over here, add a section break. So let's go down 1 and add a section break. So that's the first half, and then I start adding more content under it. And finally, I can add code. So if I wanted to add some code, which I haven't got on my clipboard, but I could add some code. So it's more of a workspace. But ultimately, it's, I would say, a piece of paper. It's a piece of Dropbox paper, that's for sure. It's like a wiki. That's the nearest I can give you. It's like a wiki. Over here, it says Untitled Paper. You can treat this just like any other document. So it's not letting me rename it there, but I can rename it and I can move it. So if I were to close that down, let's close these down, get that out of the way. You will see, there's my MacBites Magic Paper. It has renamed it. It did listen to me the first time. It just didn't show it in the browser. But from there, I can tidy up and I can move that around. So I could put that in my inbox. I can add more. I could keep them all together. I can do whatever actually makes sense. So I'm just going to open that in a browser on my other window so I can see one thing before I share it with you. Oh, what have you done? You're showing me my favourites. I don't want to see my favourites. I want to see all of them. Okay, let me just check that. Awesome. Right, so if I go into my inbox, no, I started, didn't want to do that. Let's just go into the inbox. This isn't a space yet. So it says click to describe, but there's my paper, there's my CSV file. And in my MacBites Magic Paper, I can double click that and it will open that. So it doesn't matter where you store it. You do need to access it through a browser. I'm guessing it needs the browser for the support of the features that it's added to it, but you can use that. So all of a sudden, Dropbox starts to look much more than just storage of little tiny files, usually sync files. It's become way more than that. It obviously, for something like that, makes more sense with teams, but to be honest, you could just as easily use that on your own as you could with a team. So we've seen Spaces, we've seen Dropbox Paper. You can see the file formats that you're allowed to create automatically via the interface. One really useful thing, now hopefully I can find where that disappeared to. So let's go back to Dropbox in here. Yes, right, so I'm in Dropbox. I've got far too many Dropbox things open. Let me lose all of these before you're thinking what's going on. Right, so I've got one Dropbox thing open. This one is incredibly useful. What I've had to do in years gone by, and I'm going back to 2008, is if I wanted to receive a file from somebody, I would need to share a folder with them, and then they can put the stuff in a folder. Obviously, they can share stuff with me by saying I've made this available to you via my Dropbox, but if the person doesn't have Dropbox and I'm just saying send me that file, it's a bit of a faff to go through and make shared folders. But you now have something called file requests. Now it says here I haven't got any active file requests, but I can request files. So give your request a name. So you're going to see a link for this. So I'll leave it on the screen long enough so you do. All right, title, give your request a name. Right, let's say MacBites Magic 2020, your ideas. So what I want to hear from you is your ideas. So at the moment, because only me can access that, but it says I'm going to make a folder. I can change the name of that if I want, but I won't. I'm not a pro user, so I can't set an expiration on it. But I'll click next. And what happens is, and I'm going to leave that there. That's not great, is it, in terms of copying it down, but I'll leave it there anyway. It has made 2 folders. It has made a folder in the root level called File Requests. My OCD's kicked in, it should be a capital R, but we'll move along. It's then created another folder inside that called MacBites Magic 2020 Your Ideas. Now, I could email this to people, or I could share a link. So obviously that link that you're looking at in the middle of the screen, if you were to type that into your browser, and I'll leave it open for a day or so, you won't see anybody else's files, but you will be able to use it to transfer a file yourself. And that's what would happen. The ideas would come into that folder. That's the idea. So I'll copy that and I'll say done. So it's going now. Make sure you've pressed pause and made a note of it. Right. So it's there. Now, what I need at that point is I will make... no, I don't need that. I need a new private window is what I need. So I'm not logged in as me. To prove that point, if I go to Dropbox here, I am not logged in. I am not me anymore. It wants me to sign up, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to paste that URL in. And there it is. Right. Elaine Giles wants you to add files. MacBites Magic 2020 Your Ideas. I can control who has access to the files. What you need to do is choose which files to upload. So you could put all of your ideas down. It's like the poor man's email, isn't it? But the beauty of it is you could send bigger files. So I'm going to take, let's take these 2 files. In fact, let's take the lot. Let's take all the files I've got on my desktop and add them up here. So it's added 3 files. I can add more, or I can take some away. It asks me for my first name, last name and email address. Pro tip, it doesn't really need to be a real one, but I would rather you use your real name so I know who they're from. What we usually do is put Mr. Test Tester, and his email address, surprisingly enough, is testtester@testtester.com. I've used that for years. So that's what I'm saying about it doesn't really need to be real, but if you're going to do it, please let me know who it's from. And you just upload. So you don't see the folder, nothing like that. It literally is just a portal for people to upload, and it's done. Right, so I'll move that one out of the way. Over here it's saying nothing's arrived, but I'll refresh that. And now it says I've got 3 submissions and a knockout. There we go. So there, and it says who it's from at the beginning, which is very nice. That is great because it orders them. The sort order is then by who has sent them to you. And there you go. And from there you can access that. So I could, in here, open that file and it would show me what was in it. And there, that was what was in it. Party People was in it, if you recall. And I can download that and I can access that from my desktop. So let's go in to open my Dropbox folder. And there is File Requests. In File Requests is Your Ideas, and there are the files. That's rather neat. That's pretty cool. So I was impressed with that. Now, other things that you can do with it. I'm only really showing the best of these features. I did the best of Dropbox, so the best of Google Drive last time, so I'm doing the best of Dropbox. Obviously, there's downsides to it, like the price of it, but these features are incredibly good. You've seen it in Finder, so when I go into Dropbox in there, the integration is brilliant. So it creates a Dropbox folder within your user folder, and everything else comes into there. But you do have the Dropbox app, and you do have the opportunity from up here in Dropbox. One of these icons is Dropbox. I'm sure it is. To control it. Come on, Dropbox. You can probably see it. I'm blinded by services and I can't see it for love nor money. I can see Google. One of them's there, isn't it? There it is. Right. What you can do in here, obviously you can upgrade. They want you to upgrade. But you can control stuff in here. So you can see I'm using 30% of 16 gig, and I had that from referrals. But you can pause your syncing, you can get more space, you can go into your preferences. When you go into your preferences, you can control the sync. So I don't selectively sync, but you have the option to selectively sync. Okay, come out of there. What else have we got? There's sharing, obviously. So any of this can be shared. It can even be shared through here. So if I was to create a new folder and say for sharing, you can do that. The integration is so good, you can do it via Dropbox through your Finder. So you can view it, you can open it, rewind it, copy your Dropbox link, but you can also share it from there as well. So you can choose whether it's who it goes to and whether they can edit or whether they can only view, etc. So all of that can be done via the website, can be done locally as well. All I'll say about that is the sharing is fantastic. The only pain is this situation where somebody shares it read-only with you and you can't move it, rename it, or whatever. Because the thing with the for sharing is, let's assume that's shared, and then I think, I'm reorganising and I don't want a folder called for sharing. I want this to indicate that they're shared. I can do this. I can go in and I can rename that folder, and nobody who has access to it is any the wiser. They can rename it at their end and or move it, and you are none the wiser. So that's where Dropbox is the most amazing service. Google Drive allows you to do exactly the same, but services like OneDrive, no chance. iCloud, leave it alone. Let's not even go there. So that's why Dropbox is so popular. It is that advanced in terms of its sharing. Everybody can use shared resources, but name them as they want and move them where they want. And it does, it works brilliantly. Right, so let's get back in here and do a wrap up of that. So we've seen the OS client, which is new and does actually allow you to do a lot more than it did before. So while I poo-pooed it initially, let's not do that. It's pretty decent. Dropbox Spaces is that work area that you can use on your own. You can have a space on your own, but you can also share and works fantastically. Dropbox Paper's the wiki style bit, which I'm impressed with. I had heard of Dropbox Paper. I had had a look at it when it very first came out and thought, well, this doesn't do much, does it? But now, yes, absolutely. If somebody needed to work with Dropbox Paper and sent me an invitation, I'd be like, okay, I can use that. I probably would stick with the services I've got already, but if I had the need, I'd definitely use it. One thing I will be using is the transfer where you request files. That's brilliant. I'm loving that. A selective sync, in fact, that's where I send it to you. That's what I mean. I know what I mean. The selective sync I've never done, but I am going to have to upgrade. There is no option for me because the second I add a new service, I'm gone. With that limitation of 3 devices. So at that point, I will need to selectively sync because I will want to use the 2 terabytes of storage that I've got, but my internal drive is not 2 terabytes. So I will need to selectively sync. Discuss the sharing options and the file requests, and they're brilliant. They cannot be bettered. So I'm assuming the majority of you have already got a Dropbox account. You can get a free account, although it doesn't mention it there. It's very difficult, to be honest with you, with Dropbox to try and sign up for a free account anymore. They want you to try one of the other ones for free on a trial basis. But you can get a free account and you get 2 gig of storage, which is not the best, is it? Because they want you to upgrade to one of these, either for Teams, which is 5 terabytes on the standard, or as much as you need. Dread to think how much that is. But obviously, we're probably looking at the individuals, and there's Plus and Professional. Feature-wise, I'd love Professional. Price-wise, not happening. It's about £17 a month. So it's more than double the Plus price for a little bit more storage and a couple of extra features. I do like the features, but I'm still not going to be paying for them. Not that price, I'm not. So I can see an upgrade in my future, definitely before March, because that's when the new iPads will be out and I'll probably want one. Luckily, I did manage to just sneak in with my last laptop before they changed the rules. So all of my devices are syncing grandfathered at the moment. But in the future, that's not going to happen. Now I've seen all of the features it's got, I can see a little bit more where the price is coming from, but they're not considering that you may have other services like Evernote that you want to use for things that they're now saying, well, look, we've got Dropbox Paper. Because I think more people use Evernote than Dropbox Paper for that kind of work. But those are the good features of Dropbox. And that's the price you will pay for them. Now, what could be better than one unboxing? Ooh, 2 unboxings. Right, I have an unboxing. Obviously, I need to share this with you, which is going to be interesting. So let me do that first. I've been buying things again. This is not a great surprise to you, is it? There is my unboxing. Ooh, you should have a clue. You should have a clue just by looking at the box. I know, it's got the Amazon logo on it. There we go. There it is. Amazon logo. Ooh, that means it's not just from Amazon. It's actually an Amazon product that has been sitting here all week waiting for me to unbox it. I'm going to need scissors for this one. It's tight. This is something I bought in the Black Friday sale. I do believe it's still the same price, which is a bit naughty because they were saying it was an amazing offer. Well, it is an amazing offer, but, you know, can you not do that? Can you make me think I've got an even better offer? Right, let's open this up. I have no idea how this opens up. That looks like it lifts up, but maybe it doesn't. Oh, I think I've opened both ends in my excitement. Right, guesses. Get it in the chat. I will be looking at the chat. Come on. It looks like inside the brown box, there's another brown box. You're all going to like this, you are. All right, let's get it open. It is, it's another brown box. There you go, another brown box. Awesome. Come on, I expect a little bit more than a brown box. Oh, this one's not a brown box. This one's actually just a piece of brown card. And then the toy. And there is the toy. It is a new Amazon Echo Show. It is a Show 8-inch show. Now, there's a reason for this. I know what you're thinking. You've already said, woman, that you've got more Echo Shows than you have rooms in the house. Yes, we do. We also have a broken one. I seriously contemplated the 10-inch version. This one was $59.99. The 10-inch was like over £200, and I thought, you know what, the 8-inch will do. Because it's replacing a 7-inch, so I won't notice the difference. The one that we have in the kitchen, which is quite handy to have a screen on, it's developed a fault. I'll record the fault for next week. But the fault is that the screen has got like lines on it, and sometimes it looks all right, but sometimes not so much. So when it's bad, it's really bad. So we got the new one. So let's unbox it and have a look. Obviously, haven't set it up yet. That'll be a completely different video. I have had the devil's own job on occasions trying to set up Echo Shows. Worked out what the problem was. Didn't like the Apple network. You know, the one that I nuked. I nuked the Apple network. It was doing my head in. It does seem to work much better now, but you cannot have a VPN on while you are trying to set it up, or it doesn't set up at all. I've gone for white. It's for the office. Normally, I just think the white ones look better. But some of the ones I noticed that were white had a dark screen on, but I do believe this one should be totally white. So let's take... Oh, nice little handle. Let's take it out. There we go. Oh, plug at the bottom. There we go. Plug, plug, plug. I did have a plug off another broken one. That's another story. There we go. That's what it looks like. I'm liking that little packaging. That looks rather good. Rather good. Right, let's try and get in. Oh, it's not stuck in any kind of way. It is just opening. So I'm going to move that down a bit so you can see it. There we go. And inside it's wrapped. Shall I do the sniff thing and see if it smells like new Apple kit? Just a sec. No, it doesn't. It smells of absolutely nothing. So that is in its plastic, which I will attempt to extricate it from. I have no idea how to do that. Oh, you come off here. You do. So let's take that off there. Hopefully that should just all fall away. Apparently not. You come off this way. There we go. There it is. It's off. And that's it. So obviously, I'm going to need to plug it in and configure it and set it up, but that's it so far. Wanted to actually show you, if you were in the market for this, across the top, you've got your buttons. So there's the mute and the plus and minus on the volume. But this little thing over here, useful. That's the camera lock. So on the front there, that's the camera on, where you can see the dark spot. But there's a physical turn the camera off. And I think pretty much all of ours have got that, especially the ones in the bedroom. But that is much nicer than the other one, which didn't have one. The other one, can I show you the other one? Can I do a comparison? Oh, what am I doing to myself? I've got another one over here, which is actually plugged in. Can I bring it across? How long's the cable? It'll go in. Okay. Let's bring that across here. All right, that's the new one. That's the old one. So you can see it's much better, much bigger rather, not better, much bigger, but it has a smaller screen. So this bit across the bottom here is audio. Screen-wise, this one's bigger, but this device is a whole lot bigger. So I'm actually really looking forward to the fact it's going to be much smaller. So this one, which is still working absolutely fine, is going in the kitchen to replace the one that isn't absolutely fine. And this new one, so let's get that out of the way. Put it back over there. Now I've knocked everything off the table. This new one is going to go in here. So I will set it up. I will let you see it all when it's set up next week. And we'll see how much different and better it is. I have a show in the office, despite the fact... Let me turn this round. Whee! I also have one of those. That's another Alexa. But I have that because I have all of the cameras for the dog. So I can just monitor the front door, the back door and the dog from up here with my trusty Echo. So that's why I've gone for one with a screen. So that's the first unboxing, the Echo. All right, putting that down over there. I need to open this because it's been sat here for, I dread to think how long. I am going across and getting it. Got other stuff sat on top of it as well. Right, this one's quite heavy. Ooh. I've been sat with this since Black Friday to open it for you. Look at this. I didn't open this. I think this is the delivery man. All right, this was something that we talked about. Oh, let's go in there. Oh. We talked about it Black Friday. I said I'd bought them. I also said I'd bought a couple more Mike's accounts. And we've unboxed one before, I'm sure we have. I'm sure we must have done, because I've got hundreds of these things. This is an 8 terabyte Seagate backup drive. Well, I'll be using it for backup. There we go. They are always, never, ever, ever, ever buy one drive, unless you're replacing one that's actually broken and you have a twin of it. No, I buy in twos. Here we go. There we go. So there's two of them. I always buy in pairs. So when these are installed, one will be whatever I decide to call it, and the other will be underscore backup one. I like these drives. I don't think they are the actual newest that Seagate do, but I like them. So let me move that round so you can see. I like them because they have a pass-through port on the front, so you can daisy chain them, but I don't do that. I use that to access pen drives, because if you think of how awkward an iMac is, let me get that one out of the way so we can see this one. You can just see it there, but you'll see it better if I open it. So let me get in and open it. I'm attempting to get in. Not the easiest thing to get in. Come on. Oh, another thing I must show you with these drives, which is one of the reasons that I buy these drives, as opposed to any other kind of drives. Yes, Lassie, I am looking at you. Come on, let's get the drive out of the box. There we go. There's the drive. So let's have a look at the thing on the front that I am talking to you about, that is most useful for accessing pen drives. And that is these two ports here. Standard USB ports. I think, yep, goes that way up. It's got little rubber legs on it. But one of the reasons that I buy Seagate is The power supplies are standard power supplies. So if I turn that round and show you that there, that little circular hole there. These are standard power supplies. Many moons ago, I spent an absolute fortune on LaCie drives. Great drives, power supplies, absolutely shocking. I am left with about 8 to 10 LaCie drives and one working power supply for all of them. I thought it's fine, I'll go on eBay and replace them. Yeah, right. £80 for a power supply. Not happening. You would think, well, just take the drive out of the case. Ah, you would. But inside, there's some kind of drive array going on. So you'd have a terabyte drive, but inside there's two 500s. So you wouldn't be able to access anything. So I always make sure whenever I'm buying drives that it has a standard power supply in it. So I won't buy a drive unless I've seen the back of it. I've suggested to Amazon they actually take photos of the back of it so you can see the connections. And that's why I always go for Seagate. I know some people say Western Digital are better. Not in my experience. I've had so many Western Digitals die. The other thing in this box is, and I think it says it on the front, it actually gives you, and I think it's valid till February next year, gives you a couple of months free Creative Cloud access. So I've had some of these drives last year when they were on offer. I think they're a couple of pounds cheaper this year. But basically you get this little thing here. There should be a code inside, something like that. Is it a code? Redemption code? No, it's a little application that's actually on the drive. Oh, it's valid longer than that. Must be redeemed by January the 31st, 2021. So you put that in and there'll be some way you run it and then click on the button and log in and etc. And you get, I think it's 3 months, 2 months or 3 months free. What did that say? 2-month membership must redeem by the 31st of January 2021. So if you wanted it, I presume there's only one, irrespective of how many drives you buy, but if you wanted a couple of months access to Creative Cloud, for whatever the reason, it's included. I paid £105 each for those. I think the price has gone up again, but if you want one, fear not. These things are forever coming on offer in the sales. So the next sale will be the pre-Christmas sale probably, or at the latest, it'll be Boxing Day. Either way. If you want one, they will be available and they'll be very cheap very soon. Right, so let's wrap up from that. Let me show you what I got. It was an Echo Show 8-inch. I didn't go for the stand. I don't think I need the stand, as it said, stand sold separately. I do use it for audiobooks, but pretty much cameras for me. I showed you how you can open and close the camera. When that's plugged in and working, although it's a physical switch, it will let you know that you've closed it, which is very good of it. It does work brilliantly for talking to each other. I've done that between the office and the kitchen with Mike as well. I've not done the photo thing. I need to try the photo thing. But the video thing where you say, show me, and then you name a camera, just works fabulously. I cannot fault that at all. So that was the first unboxing. And the second unboxing was my 8TB Backup Plus hub, which is a USB 3 Seagate thing. And I've got a shelf full of them already. And as I say, it comes with 2 months of Adobe Creative Cloud. It is cross-platform. I think it ships NTFS format, so I reformat it for Mac. But apart from that, it's very, very simple to use. Right, well, I hope you've enjoyed that show. We're back again next week. The 20th, that's a Friday. So Friday night, usual time, usual place, usual fun. Oh, it's going to be a good one next week. I already know what we're doing. That's unusual. In itself, that is unusual. But it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So don't miss it. We love you guys. And if you love us, can you give us a like? Give us a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want first dibs on everything that I do, you will need to subscribe to elainegiles.com/VIP. We don't overdo the mails. Honestly, we don't. There's also the MacBites mail. And as you know, the MacBites mail, we are in the midst of our Advent thing. And you won't want to miss that because there's freebies every day. You definitely won't want to miss that. Obviously, you can normally watch with us live, but this was a YouTube premiere. You can also watch on demand at youtube.com/ElaineGiles. In the meanwhile, get in touch with us. If you've got any ideas for future shows or anything else like that, let us know. We can never have too many suggestions. And anyway, we love hearing from you guys, and it's Christmas, so drop us a line. We'd love, love, love to hear from you. Hopefully, I'll be back by now, and I'll be in the chat chatting with you. But I hope you've enjoyed this show. If you've got any feedback from this show, or indeed, like I've said, anything else, do get in touch with us. But it's goodbye from me. Mike would say goodbye if he's here, but he's not. He's walking the dog. Thought it was quiet. But he excelled, as you know. And as I say, we will both see you next time.